Hey everyone, this is Lomi, and today I'll be showing you what I did to take the glowing eye thing to the next level. This pair was an early try, but it worked pretty well. They're so bright. Here's the trick. They're battery-powered LEDs. I've always had a hard time with Rune's eyes because the purple glow pigment is the weakest color. It takes forever to charge, and doesn't glow as long or as bright as the other pigments. So let's get started, and I'll show you how I made these. First things first, you'll need clay for the eye bases. Resin won't work for these because it has a slight translucency that lets the light bleed through. So I use white Sculpey, which is much more opaque and doesn't bleed as much light. I make the eye bases by rolling a small piece of clay in my palms. Then using a drinking straw, I press down through the middle to create a hole, twisting the straw to remove it. You'll probably want to make a few bases, so that you can pick the best ones. I painted my bases white because there was some visible dust in them when I was done. But I also want the bases nice and shiny, like resin bases are, so I paint them with clear nail enamel. Using paper irises isn't necessary, but acrylic paint does dull the light you get from the LEDs, sometimes by as much as half. Since purple LEDs are, like the glow powder, the weakest color, I didn't want to hinder them. I knew I wanted the pupils to black out the light, so I painted them onto paper-printed irises, using a paintbrush dipped in black dimensional fabric paint. This worked really well for creating a pupil that will block the light and for creating a little depth too. After the paint dried, I brushed nail enamel over them to seal the paper irises. Once it dried, I cut them out. After my irises were cut out, I used a big fat drop of Lisa Pavelka Magic Gloss to create a domed cornea. This was almost out of frame, I apologize. The resin will go right to the edge of the iris without spilling over though, making a perfect dome. You might not be able to see, but one of the irises has some small bubbles in the resin. Magic Gloss is often too thick to pull the bubbles out with a match or lighter, so instead try this. Using a sewing needle with a large eye, gently dab the eye over the bubbles, and watch them get sucked right out of the resin. They'll stay trapped in the eye of the needle. For this particular pair of eyes, I'm using supplies bought from modeltrainsoftware.com. These are excellent for beginners because they come with the soldering work already done, so you don't have to learn any new skills. It's super easy and safe. While you can get tiny LEDs powered by a watch battery, they didn't come in purple. So I got a 9-volt battery hookup. The battery is too large to fit inside my doll's head, but I can easily run the wires under his head cap and hide the battery pack in his shirt. This particular connector has a switch on it too, for easy light control. Then there are the two LEDs. These already have resistors attached, so they're ready to go. This is a piece of shrink tubing, which I got just because I'd never used it before, and I wanted to try it. Electrical tape is totally okay to use, and it's easy to find. So let's wire up our eyes. First things first, untangle your wires. Don't be intimidated, this is incredibly easy. Just match up the two negative wires, the black ones, from the two LEDs, and slide the shrink tubing onto the wires. Then take the black wire from the battery connector and twist the bare metal ends of the wire together good and tight. You don't even have to use pliers for this, just make sure it's snug and doesn't pull apart. Slide the shrink tubing up over the wire connection, and that side's done for now. Repeat the same process with the red positive wires. Match up the two red wires from the LED, slide on the shrink tube, and then twist the bare wire ends tightly together with the red wire from the battery connector. Before we shrink the tubing to cover up our connections, it's a good idea to test them, and make sure your lights and switches work. Mine look great, and the switch is good too. So using a regular hairdryer on the high setting, I apply heat to shrink the tubes. And, well, they shrink. Shrink them down nice and tight onto your wires, and the electrical work is done. Now we'll embed the lights in the eyes. Using a low-temperature hot glue gun, carefully fill the back side of the hole in the eye base. It's important to use a low-temperature glue for this, because high temperatures can damage the LEDs, and if the glue comes out the other end of the hole, it's also less likely to burn your fingers. Once the glue is in place, take one of your LEDs and carefully insert it into the glue. Be sure to only insert the bulb part of the LED. You don't want it to sink to the wires, because if you ever need to replace an LED, you want the back uncovered, so you can wiggle this bulb back out of the glue. Once the LED is in place, you can add a little more glue to the top side of the eye, and then press on the iris chip. I went a little out of frame there, but I'll do the other eye too so you can see better. So far, these are looking pretty great. So now for the other eye, doing the same thing. Filling the back with low temp hot glue, setting the LED, and letting it cool enough that it holds. Then I'll add more glue to the top of the eye and press on the iris. You can pull any glue strings off afterward. Looking good. Since I painted the bases white, I want to make sure they're protected really well. So I'll seal the entire top of the eye using Americana Triple Thick Gloss. I put the wires in a clothespin to hold the eye upright, then brush a really thick layer of gloss over the entire eye, cornea and all. A few extra brush strokes to get the bubbles out, and a few hours to dry, and it's time to turn them on. How cool is that? They're just bright enough that they light up even in daylight, and they look pretty good when they're turned off too. These are definitely much closer to what I wanted in the first place, and they look amazing in the dark. Best of all, when you exclude paint drying and clay curing, it took maybe 20 minutes of work altogether. And that's all for today. Thanks for watching. Bye.